everybody to another episode of The Different News. Today, this is not just another episode, but a very special episode. I have my special guest already, as you can see, the gorgeous Gillian Whitney. And if you're on LinkedIn, I think you have seen Gillian. You see Gillian every Tuesday. At least I do. Welcome, Gillian, on my podcast. And thank you so much for accepting my invitation.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Today, we both have gathered here to commemorate the World Book and Copyright Day. Today, we will be talking about very interesting things, and I have a lot of things to learn from Gillian and, of course, all of you, because we will be talking about how exactly as you can publish your own book. It's so nice to have you on this podcast because I really follow you on LinkedIn, and the lives that you do are so knowledge packed. And of course, your book, that how you can write your business book, I have got a copy of it. First, my favorite question, how you became a business book coach?
How do we ever become anything? We kind of like fall into it. It's kind of a weavy path, but essentially when I wrote my book, I was so excited, and I've been in love with books my whole life. It's like you start off as a reader, and readers become writers, and then writers become coaches, and that's kind of the logical thing. And I think what it was once I finally did my book, which took me 21 years, so no short journey there. But once I wrote my book, and other people were like so excited for me. And then if I immediately published another book a few months later, and people came up to me and they said, that you had to take like years and years and years to write a book. And I went, no, that's what I used to do. I don't do that anymore. So I think that's how I became a book coach, was when you have succeeded in something, people just naturally ask you how to do it. You end up helping them shortcut their journey. And the next thing you know, it becomes your new passion. So that's what happened for me. I was busy being a video marketing coach, but I love books more. So that's why I made the pivot.
Thank you, Gillian, for sharing that. I think it's an added advantage that you always bring on table, because I think as an author, myself, I have written one book before, which is more in the scientific world. But I personally feel that it's more important to talk about when we write that book, and we should know how to market it. And that's a fact. I mean, we need to tell people that we have done this good work. So with your experience of video marketing, I think it's a brilliant combination and a very rare combination where, I mean, I'm sure about that. So I would like to really know if there is any story behind you becoming a business book coach, or it was just, or is it like just a process, like as you just told, or is there any inspiration behind being a business book coach?
I think it's just, if you love books, which is what I do, and I absolutely love books, because books to me open a world. And it's a great equalizer. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. It doesn't matter if you're rich or if you're poor. You can get a hold of a book. I grew up going to the public library. My mother, she didn't have very much money. And so I had a library card. So I was able to go in and get as many books as I wanted to read for free. And I found that books can educate us on anything. And then when we love books so much because we've read books, we've learned from books, we've grown from books, we naturally want to contribute back into the world. So to me, a book is a way to pay it forward. When you get to write your book and you put it out there in the world, you've added to what's already out there. And a lot of people think, oh, who am I? Who am I to write this book? But in essence, who are you not to write this book? Because we never know what's going to happen. If you don't mind, I'd love to tell a story of one of my favorite books.
Of course.
And when I was a kid, I read a book called Gone with the Wind. Very, very famous book. And I read it when I was about 13 years old. And I was kind of going through a really difficult time in my life, in my family, in my school, in my friendships. And there was a lot of turmoil in my life. And yet I found that book and I read that book. And when I'd read that book, I'd go into another world. It was like, I was no longer sitting on a bus in Toronto in the winter. I was like all of a sudden in this amazing world of the 1800s and the Civil War and everything like that. So I decided I wanted to find out the book behind the book, the story behind the story. And I wanted to learn about Margaret Mitchell, who is the author of the book. And that's like one of my favorite books. And apparently she was like, in her 20s, she'd fallen and she'd hurt her ankle. And she had to stay at home. And she was a magazine writer, never written a book before. She just wrote sort of gossip columns and stuff like that. She wrote for the Atlanta Journal in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. And so her husband, she kept sending him to the library to get books. And, because she had nothing to do. And back then, nobody had television or anything. Right. So she was just reading and reading. So finally, her husband said, you know what? He says, I'm sick of carrying these library books back. He goes, how about this? You got a great imagination. Why don't you write a book? So she said, I don't have anything to write with. So he brought her home a typewriter and she started typing her book. She wrote Gone with the Wind for the next, 10 years. She got hooked. She wrote that book, recovering from her ankle injury, right? When it was published, when she was finished, she knew a publisher. They looked at it. They published it the next year. So it took her 10 years to write it. Then she published it. Then it became like a bestseller. She won a Pulitzer Prize. Then they turned it into a movie. Then the movie won the Academy Award, all because she just sat there kind of going, well, what if her husband had just kept bringing home the library books? And here, fast forward, it affected this little kid sitting on a bus reading this book. And one day I said, when I read that, I'm going to write a book like this. So do you see how it all kind of like, it's like a domino effect. It pays it forward. But I love that her husband encouraged her to write the book. So I think that's what we need to do as a book coach or just as a colleague. If you know somebody that has a story, tell them the world could benefit from your story. If you had a problem and you came up with a solution, other people can learn from that.
Amazing. I mean, that's a fantastic story that you said. And I absolutely second your thoughts. Well, Gillian, now that we are in an era where people say that people's attention span have decreased and reading books is kind of little old-fashioned, people are more into watching videos. So in that context, do you really think that the importance of book is going down, or is it just a myth that airs around?
It's a myth. It's a myth. Books will never disappear. People love books, and a lot of times people will tune out and go and de-stress by reading a book. But here's the thing: Gone with the Wind was a gigantic book. It took me forever to read that book.
Right.
And we are now in the digital age where, yes, you said attention spans are a little bit shorter. So I recommend people write smaller books. Keep your books. I like to call them airplane reads. If you're just, if you're thinking about maybe taking a train ride or something like that, you want something that maybe you can read the book in a weekend, 1 or 2 days, a couple hours on a plane. You don't want books that are like, they're propping up the couch. They're so big. You don't want books like that anymore. But I think people will always like to read. I read whenever I'm traveling. If I'm going on a plane, I don't, you got to turn off your computer anyways, right, on the plane. So grab a book. So I don't think books are going away. Plus, as business professionals, as soon as you tell people you've written a book, even if they haven't read it, you have more credibility. I call it the 100-page business card, because people look at you as you've achieved something. Just like a degree helps us achieve something in business, writing a book, it pushes you up there above other people. So whether you're looking for a job or you're looking for a speaking gig, if you've written a book, you'll just have more credibility. So there's so many different reasons why still writing a book, it's a good thing to do.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I think one point that I will take up as you were speaking, and I personally do that, I do read a lot of books. And as you said, that's a very fantastic, suggestions that you gave, that if we are writing a book, it should be like we can spend it over a weekend, or that airplane reading was fantastic example. But Gillian, one thing I would like to understand from you or learn from you is that, for example, as a business person, whoever is wanting to write a book on their area of expertise, so is there any specific thing or in a specific process where they can figure out that what exactly to put out? Because, for example, many of us, like entrepreneurs like us, we do not one thing but several things at the background. So maybe I'm good at one part of science, the B part of science, the Z part of science, but then how do I decide what exactly to put out? If you can give little insights, I think it will be very helpful for people.
That's an excellent question. So yay, kudos to you. That's an excellent question. The first thing that I think that you should do is you should take a step back and say, who am I writing a book for? That is the number one thing, because if you write to everybody, you write to nobody. So you have to figure out who you're writing to. So we're talking about business professionals and we're talking about business books. So then what you would want to do is you'd say, how can I use this book in a business? What would I want it to do? So think of your ideal client. And I really encourage people, really get down to the, are you typically working with men, with women, what ages? Maybe you're working with young people, maybe you're working with seniors, maybe you're working middle-aged people, whatever. Really hone in on who that is so that you can really see, okay, I'm working with lawyers that are in their 40s, that are women that have 2 kids. So really get as narrow as you can. And then if you're writing it because you think it would help you in your business, think about what are the things that your clients need to know before they work with you or thinking about working with you. So for instance, one of the first books that I did was called How to Be Comfortable on Camera. Now, at that time, I was all in on video marketing, and that was my very first book. And I thought people needed help in video marketing with the tech and how to film their videos, how to edit their videos, and all that sort of thing. But then I really began to think about it, and I thought, what's the story behind the story? I think people maybe need a little bit more help with just getting comfortable in front of the camera. So instead of teaching them, oh, you got to use CapCut and then you're going to use this editor and here's how you upload it to LinkedIn. No. I had to get them comfortable with turning the camera on and not hating the camera lens. And, I remember one person said, I'd rather scratch out my eyes than do video. And I went, wow. wow, I gotta help shift that mindset. So that's what I would do with anybody. So for instance, if I was maybe I'm a digital marketer. Maybe I would want to write a book of why it's important for companies, insurance companies. Maybe I work with insurance companies, why they need to embrace digital marketing. And here's how they need to get their staff on board. I'd be dealing with those questions. So I'm identifying the problem, but then I'm the solution. So
Right.
you do it like that. So that would be my suggestion. And then the other thing is take your frequently asked questions and then do a mind map. Just do you know what a mind map? Just to explain to people, a mind map is just brainstorming on a piece of paper where you literally just doodle all over it, start in the center and say, okay, what are all the questions that my customers ask me? Because then you might start to see some patterns and you can go from there. And the next thing you know, oh, I have a book.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this very valuable insights, Julian. And before I go ahead with other questions, one thing, if you can explain, if you would like to explain that how exactly you help somebody to publish their book, what are the steps if somebody wants to take your guidance or coaching? Can you explain in brief how exactly it works?
Sure. So basically, I help people three different ways. Some people start at the beginning and they want help with the writing of their book. They sit down with the blank computer screen and they're like, it turns into a computer scream instead of a screen. So some people I help with the writing of their book, and we do it by either, number one, doing interviews like this, where we'd say, okay, you want to write a book about, blah, blah, blah. Then we'll come up with the questions, we'll tape it, and then we'll take the transcripts, and then the transcripts get turned into the book. That's the easiest way to write a book. It's very organized and very straightforward. Another way I help people is maybe they've already been on a lot of different podcasts, and we can say, let's take some of those podcasts and we'll see if there's some themes that are coming out every time you're being interviewed that maybe that's put it all together and that would be a book. So that's another way. So those are the two ways that I kind of help people to write their book. In terms of publishing it, so that's the second step. So once your book is it's written, it's edited, it's beautiful, it's ready to go, you've got your cover figured out and all that stuff, then you're saying, okay, so what do I want to do with it? So I help people with self-publishing their book, which gives them total control as opposed to going to somebody and saying, here, publish this for me, and then they're now in charge of everything. You want to, as business people, we want to stay in charge of our intellectual property, or at least that's what I think. And so I primarily teach people, coach people on using Amazon. It's the easiest way to make your book available worldwide. You can start with just Kindle. So you got my book on Kindle, you downloaded it, easy peasy. But if you want, you can take it a second step and you can have a paperback copy of your book, even a hardback copy of your book, with something that's a new technology called print on demand, which means that Amazon has printers in different countries so that if you wrote a book and somebody in the United Kingdom wanted a copy, it gets printed there and then shipped to their house. And the beautiful thing is, it no longer means we have to have boxes and boxes of books in our house and we have to mail out each book. We don't have to do that anymore. So that's called self-publishing. And the nice thing is with Amazon, it takes care of all the currency, the taxes, everything that you need to do. And then the last thing I help people on is the book marketing, because it's kind of like having a kid. Once you have a child, the baby's born, now you got to go raise it. It's the same thing with the book. Your book baby is born, and now you've got to tell the world and keep telling the world over and over and over again. That's just the natural part. People think they're just going to, write a book and it'll sell. No, you got to keep working at it.
Yeah, I'll definitely come to that because that's a very important part when it comes to marketing our book. whatever we are writing or trying to share that knowledge with the world. So, how do you advise authors on protecting their intellectual property and copyright when they are writing and self-publishing particularly?
So that's always a challenge. That's always a challenge is your copyright. So first of all, as soon as you've written your book, you actually have your intellectual property is maintained. You want to make sure that you're writing the book. And now that we're in this age of AI, it's very, very difficult because some people are actually going to AI and having AI write the book. But it's like, if you can prove that you've written your book as you go along, that's a lot better. Here in the United States, we can actually copyright our books. And so you can do that. I did a copyright for one of my books here. It's a long process, though. It's a long process. So it gets difficult on how much you want to do because people do pirate books. I've seen it with other authors, and I helped one author whose book was pirated, and it was all over the internet. And in the end, they just said, I let it go. I just had to let it go and just know that the official copies were at Amazon. That's where you buy them. And that's why it's really important to not take your book and make it a PDF on your website, because as soon as you do that, goodbye. It's like people are just going to take your book and they're going to take it and do whatever they want with it. So it is a challenging process, but you have to work within the confines of your your country to have adequate copyright. And just know it's not a cheap process. I did one book copyrighted. Just to experience it. I don't know if I do it for every single one. I just, you just get to a point where you're like, if somebody's going to steal it, they're going to steal it.
Yeah.
It's like anything.
We can't stop that. We can stop.
No.
Thieves, yeah. But we need to go, we need to keep going and do our work, of course. Yeah. So Gillian, I think you have coached many people in terms of writing a business book. Are there any common mistakes that you have noticed that authors generally do, like first-time authors or even experienced authors with whom probably you have worked with?
I'd say probably the biggest problem that people have is perfection. We get into this perfection trap and wanting to make changes and, unrealistic wanting to make changes. It's always good to edit and self-edit, but sometimes we can edit to death. And knowing at what point it's like, okay, it's never going to be perfect. It's good enough. We have to get it out there. And that's probably the biggest thing I see people struggle with is how long to keep rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. I was talking with somebody the other day and they said, well, on average, editors suggest you do it 7 times. And I went, I don't want to write a book 7 times. I don't want to re-edit 7 times. And just know that you're going to get better. It's like the first book that I published was really short. It was like maybe 60 pages. And I decided I just put it out there because if it was perfect, it would never have left my computer. I'd still be fiddling with it. But just know the second book, I got better. The third book, I got better. And so I think really tackling that perfection monster holds people back. I read something the other day with somebody who they got to their book being 99.9% done and they couldn't hit that publish button. That was just like that little voice in their head going, I'm not sure. And it's like, get it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I have a similar experience of mine. I mean, I was trying to write one book and I think it's just 3 chapters and still it is 3 chapters. And that perfectionist syndrome I mean, I was a victim of it, but I think I have probably come out of it, and I'm sure with your insights and the things, of course, you talk about on your Tuesday lives on LinkedIn, it's very very helpful. And thank you for sharing so much knowledge, which helps people worldwide. I really thank you, because I follow that, and I'm sure that if anybody who's listening us, and if you are really interested in writing or know the world of publishing books and writing the nitty gritties, I think Gillian's Tuesday Lives will open your mind in various aspects. At least I see it that way. So
Thank you.
yeah. So well, Gillian, one thing we have when we start writing is a common thing, apart from the perfectionist syndrome, is a writer's block. So,
Mm.
mm, so how do you think that, if somebody, it's not about who is first time writer or second time or third time, but I think it's a very common thing as authors do face this. So how, or writers do face this. So how, is there any like quick tip to overcome a writer's block?
Yes, you need to talk it through. So sometimes we can't write. And the best thing to do is get up from your computer and go for a walk. And nowadays, pretty much everybody goes for a walk and they take this with them. And I use a program called Otter AI. It's a app you can download, and I think you can even start with the free version and go, I think 500 minutes a month or something like that. It's pretty good. But there's other ones out there. That's just the one I use. So what I do is I'll go for a walk and I'll start asking myself questions.
Mhm.
What is it that, what am I struggling with? So if I was trying to write a particular part of my book, so maybe I'm trying to write the part about I wanted to give 5 tips on, such and such. Well, I'd say, well, what are the 5 tips? And I just start brainstorming and talk it through, and just know that when you just start talking, it flows out of you. When we're sitting in front of a typewriter, or nobody's sitting in front of a typewriter these days, they're sitting in front of a computer. But what's so dangerous about a computer is that we want to type it perfectly. We want to write it as if it's already in the book. So we don't just bang out our ideas. We're typing, but we're backspacing, and we're typing again, and we're backspacing. And then the next thing you know, we highlight the whole thing, delete the whole thing. Yeah. And we just spin in circles. But if you're talking into your phone, it's a free flow. It just comes out of your head. Then afterwards, what you can do is you can transcribe what you just said, and you might have one paragraph that's good enough that you can start with. So that's one way. Another way that I love to do it is take something you've already done and see if you can just edit that and start with something that's done. So if you have a blog article, or maybe you were on a podcast episode and you were like, oh, I talked about those 6 things, then you could go ahead and take that and then kind of tweak it, revamp it. So those are the best ways of writer's blocks. Don't fight it. Go another route, and I think you'll be fine. Writer's block really is just about fear.
Yeah.
And it's just, sometimes we just need to get ourselves out of it and move forward. So those are my tips on moving forward.
I think this is gold. What you shared right now, this is gold. I must say that. Well, coming to about, now we understood about self-publishing. We also understood from you that how exactly we can overcome writer's block and many other aspects. But the most important thing, which as an author I also faced initially, in any genre or any niche that anybody is working or writing, is about talking about their book or marketing it, trying to reach out to more people, and of course, straightforward, if I say, to sell their book, right? So what is the best strategy you think would be if an author wants to follow, even if they are doing for the first time? what is the best marketing strategy that they can follow?
You have to do it and just recognize that that's probably the hardest part of writing a book is talking about it. So you have to do things like get on a podcast like this. The first thing that I recommend everybody do, and this is where my video marketing side pops in, is make a video that says why you wrote the book. It's an important thing, and it doesn't feel salesy to do that. That feels more informational, because I think for the most part, most of us are uncomfortable with just saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Nobody wants to hear that. So ways that you can get around it is make it informational. Here's why I wrote my book. Here's why people are enjoying my book. You talk about the book as a thing as opposed to just buy it. Do different things. Get pictures of people holding your book. Advertise, not necessarily advertise, but promote the reviews that you're getting on social media, because that shines the light on the person who was kind enough to leave you a review. So they feel good about themselves. And again, it's a sort of back way of showing about your book. One of the greatest things is to have a book launch party. So I've done those for several people that on the day of their book, that they've launched it out to the world, we have a live stream, and we do it on LinkedIn and we do it on YouTube. And for 30 minutes, we show up and we talk about the book, and it's like people come and they help celebrate, because it's like having a baby. It's like everybody wants to be there to help you celebrate. And you can do great things, like maybe you want to give it away real cheap that day, that first day that it goes out there. I've done that where I've just said, you know what, today I'm going to just make it free. And I just made the digital copy free for everybody. So you can do lots of different ways to basically just keep putting the word out there over and over and over again, and make a consistent effort that you're at least advertising your book once a month, once a week, whatever. You're much better to slowly drip it out over time, as opposed to, 4 days of like, blah, 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 blah. And then we never hear from you again. Right. But here's the number one thing that I think people are making a mistake. Use the free real estate you have on social media. So put your book in your LinkedIn banner. Make sure that we see that you're an author in your headline. There's so many people that they tell me I've written a book, and I'm like, you have? Because it's the best kept secret. I don't see your book anywhere. It's like if I go to your profile, I don't see a post about your book. I don't see a link to Amazon about your book. It's like you're hiding it. Don't hide it. Let us see it.
So I think, is it like if we are making videos, like as you said, it's a very brilliant idea. So in today's world, videos are quite popular. I mean, most popular, I would say, as a content format. But I think people like you and me are also people who like to read the text format. So in terms of video marketing, is there any specific set of patterns that we need to follow, or is it like as you say that we can do something weekly and probably monthly to talk about our book? Can you give any simple strategy that would really help anybody who is trying to write a book or market their book for the first time?
I would say, the easiest thing is start with that video of why I wrote my book, but keep it very short. So that's the thing that I would recommend. People don't want to hear a video longer than 2 minutes max. Aim for about 90 seconds is the better way to go, and literally make it one idea with a video, one idea per video. So you wouldn't want to say, here's why I wrote my book, who my book is for. You don't want to do that many things. Make those to be separate videos, and you could maybe do things like behind the scenes, like, I got my book in the mail today. I'm so excited. Here's my book, and make a video just about that. So think of them as brand awareness, and your book is the brand. So that's what I would think, that you might say, here I am. I'm on vacation and I took my book with me, and make a little video of like, here's your book. And like, now it's in New York City. Isn't that exciting? My book, I know somebody who actually took their book to a bookstore, and they made a little video about their book in the bookstore. And they said, it's not really in a bookstore, but I brought it to the bookstore. And everybody's looking at me and laughing. And he just made it a funny little video. But the thing is, again, it was just brand awareness. So it's okay to have fun. It's okay to do little things. I saw somebody take all the pictures of the people holding up the book, and she turned that into a video of just the pictures, and she put some fun music. So having a goal of maybe once a week or once a month and of your book, but change up the format. So maybe a video sometimes, maybe just a little book review, a snippet. You could read your book. There's so many different things that you can do. So just get creative and just set yourself goals. Just set yourself goals.
Amazing. Thank you, Gillian, for all the insights that you shared today. I think it's brilliant. And irrespective of if somebody is trying to write a book for the first time, second time, or 5 times and more like you, doesn't matter. But these are all very valuable things. Just before I let you go, is there any, I won't say advice or suggestion, but certain things that from your experiences you have learned that you would like to share about book writing and publishing to everybody who is listening to this podcast today?
The biggest thing that I would want to share is to not overthink it, and not to hold yourself back with the who am I to write this book. Every single person on this planet has learned something and has a story to share. And just know that anything that you have experienced that you feel compelled to put into writing, to put into a book, it's probably because somebody else out there needs to read that message. So don't ever think about who am I to do this. Think about you are to do this. If you have that calling to write a book, listen to it, lean in, and just know if your book helps one person, you have achieved success. And even if you've just got your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts onto paper, that's a success as well. So if you feel called to write, please write, because the world needs to read what you write.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you today. And I'm sure my audience and everybody who's listening to this podcast will be extremely beneficial for them, whatever you have shared. And thank you so much for being here. It's an honor, pleasure for me to host you today on this special day, of course.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for having me. And it was an honor for me to be here and talk with you and your audience. So I'm excited to have been a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And keep watching the different news. And please subscribe to my channel to see more experts like Gillian and more wonderful career paths. And of course, valuable insights that we get and to learn from such experts. Thank you, Gillian. Thank you, everybody.